Before we start this video, a large thank you to Mario, Manuel, and Abel for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hello everybody, and today we're going to conclude our save and load menu for now. We'll have everything working so it's all functional. And just before I continue, I'm going to go ahead and fill in 1 through 10 on these character slots. So there we go. Pause and be right back. I'll just write in 3 here and then do the rest off camera. Okay, there we go. So I have all 10 slots. Now, what do we want to do in this video? Well, we want to make it so we can delete slots. We want to make a warning pop up when you try to delete a slot. And we want to make it so when you're scrolling through these slots, the current slot that's selected is auto-centered on your scroll rect, meaning if you use a controller, it won't go off screen. And I'll show you what I mean by that later in the video. So let's first go to the title screen manager and let's make a header for save slots. And let's make a public character slot variable. And I'm going to call it current character slot or current selected slot. And I'm doing this because basically we need to know which slot we have highlighted in the load menu to know which one to delete. So let's go to the character slot enum now. And I'm just going to actually open the script enums. So it's just up here as well. And I'm going to add no slot after 10, which means, as it states, there will be no slot selected if this is the enum option. Now, right below any of these functions down here on the title screen manager, I'm going to make a new public void. I'm going to call it select character slot. And I'm going to make it require a character slot. And I'm just going to basically assign the current selected slot to whatever slot that you pass. Okay, easy enough. Now, basically, when we highlight one of our load slots on the loading screen, we want to pass that to the title screen manager. So to do that, we're just going to go over to the UI character save slot script, which is on our save slots. We're going to make a public void select current slot, and then we're just going to say title screen manager.instance.select current slot and pass whatever slot is attached to the game object that's on this. Now we need to go to the prefab, and I'll show you what I'm talking about, by the way, if you forget what this is. If we go to the title screen here in the load menu, under our scroll rec, we have all these save slots, and this script is attached to these. So let's go to the prefab for this. And now let's make an onSelect event on this button. What does this do? This fires whenever this button is selected. So event trigger, go down to add new event type and hit select. Add a new event here, drag in the script, and let's call the function select current slot. And now whenever this button is selected in games, whenever you scroll over it, it's going to fire that function, which is going to change the current selected slot on the title screen manager. So that should work as intended. And now from there, we can actually basically delete whatever the current selected slot is if we want. We have to do a few more things first, obviously, but this is the basic idea of it. So I'm going to initialize this at character slot.none or no slot because there's no slot selected at first. And you may need to change this in the inspector like I do because I didn't assign that immediately. So now if I go over to the title screen manager, I'm actually going to copy and paste current slot equals no slot, and under close load game menu, you could put it here, but I'm gonna do something better. We want no slot to be selected every time we either leave the menu or hit return. So if you close the game menu, basically, it still has the possibility of being selected. So instead, I'm gonna make a public void called select no slot, and then say current selected slot equals no slot, and then on the return button, I'm going to make an onSelect event using event trigger, and then add new event type, select. And then I'm going to basically call that function select no slot because as you know, you have to go back using the return button. So meaning you have to always select this button to leave the load screen menu. So you're always going to reset your slot by going back to this button. And that's the simplest way to do it. Now, if I go to game, check this out. It says current slot, no slot, right? I go to press start and I go down to load game. And then I go down to character slot 1. There it is, character slot 1. Character slot 2 is character slot 2. And return is no slot. So that's working as intended so far. So now we have a way to track which slot we have highlighted. Perfect. Now we can basically delete that slot if we want by pressing a button. So we're going to use some inputs here. Now we could just say header. And we could make a title screen inputs. And we could set up a whole input manager style system on this script. So we could say serializable field bool delete character slots is equal to false, and then initialize that true. But we're gonna do something a little bit different. We're still gonna do that, but we're gonna do it in a way that it saves memory, and in my opinion it's a little bit neater. But if you'd prefer to put it here, you can. Let's make a public game object called delete character slot pop-up because we don't want to delete the slot instantly. We want to warn the player first so they don't accidentally delete a character. And then down below here, let's just make a comment to make this neater. I'm gonna call this character slots. So anything to do with character slots, I'm gonna put under this comment. Now I'm going to make a public void attempt to delete character slot. And I call this attempt because it's going to basically send you a pop-up. And if you confirm on the pop-up you want to delete it, then you'll actually delete it. So we're going to say delete character slot pop-up dot set active is equal to true. And I have forgotten what I've called that variable already, so I'm going to scroll back up and copy it. There we go. Okay. Delete character slot pop-up dot set active true. And that's good. And I'm going to say if current selected slot does not equal character dot no slot. That's why we're calling this attempt. So basically, if the current highlighted slot is no slot, we're not going to run this code because there's no slot actually selected. So otherwise, enable the character slot pop-up, and let's also make a variable for the button that's going to be accompanied with this. I'm also going to change this to a serializable field because that doesn't need to be public, the delete character slot pop-up, I mean. And while we're at it, we have a nice header for pop-ups, so I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to put the button I'm about to make under the button header, just to keep it nice and neat and organized. Okay, so this button is not a part of the main menu or the load menu. It's kind of part of its own thing, so I'm just going to call it delete character pop-up confirm button. That's pretty easy to understand, and if you look at that variable name, you know exactly what it does. It's attached to delete character pop-up, and it is the confirm button. So let's say delete character pop-up confirm button dot select. Okay, now let's make another function, public void close delete character pop-up. And all this is going to do is close delete character pop-up menu, and then it's going to select the last button or the best button that makes the most sense, and that's going to be return. So load menu return button dot select. And now we also need one last function to actually delete the profile itself. This is when you hit the confirm button and you're sure you want to delete it. So public void delete character slot. And now we're going to basically call the world save game manager and just call delete game. And we're going to put these two things before it too because it also does the same thing. It returns to the return button and closes the pop-up. So let's go to the world save game manager and make a public void delete game right under save games. Then we have load game, save game, and delete game. Let's make it require a character slot. Let's call it character slot. And then we're just going to basically get the name of the file we want to delete depending on the character slot, which we can do here. We can copy all this logic from load game because it's still applicable. This is how we fetch the file name, how we fetch the application path, and yada, yada, yada. Now, I'm going to erase these comments because they're not applicable for this function. Instead of saying load a previous file, we can say something like choose a file to delete based on the name. And then we can just basically call save file data writer. And I believe it was just delete file if I'm not mistaken. Delete save file. Okay, perfect. Now let's save that. And that, make sure you pass character slot instead of current character slot being used. Don't want to do that. Pass the character slot in this function. That should work. Let's save it. And let's go over to the the title screen manager. And then right below the load menu return.select, say world save game manager.instance.delete game. And we're going to have to pass the character slot. And that's going to be the current character slot selected, the variable we just made a little while ago. So now that we have this all ready to go, we have to basically make it so when we press in my case, when we use the X button on an Xbox controller, we're going to attempt to delete a profile slot. Now, you'll notice that we have an old pop-up here that we've already made. So let's clone that or duplicate it. And I'm going to enable the title screen load menu so I can see where it's going to sit. Make sure you put it after the menu game object. Otherwise, see, it's behind it and I can't see it. But if I put it below the menu object, now it's in front of it. So I'm just going to modify this a little bit. I'm going to put it up, say, about this size. I'm not going to spend too much time modifying how it looks. I'm then going to change this to delete character pop-up. And I'm going to go to the text. I'm going to make the text say what I want the message to be, which is delete character ? And then I'm going to take this button here. I'm going to make a group first, create an empty game object. I'm going to call this a group. This is going to keep our buttons organized. I'm going to stretch it with Alt, make it the size of the box, then recenter it, and then make it half the size of the box, just about maybe a third, and then pin it, anchor it to the bottom here. And then on this group, I'm going to attach a horizontal layout group object. I'm going to change it to middle center, so it binds things to the middle of it and the center of this game object. I'm going to drag my button in there after I rename it to OK. And then I'm going to duplicate that button, and I'm going to change this button to No. Now, let's go and change the text on this to No. And let's go and change the text on this one. And make sure you untick width and height for child force expand if you want to make your own spacing. So, for example, I want my spacing to be something like maybe 25. So that's perfect for me. I'm actually going to go now and I'm going to change the on-click events. So on no, we just want to close the delete character pop-up. That's it. And it just will go back to the return button. So close, delete character pop-up, and then on OK, we want to actually try to delete the character. So it's title screen manager, and then it should be delete character slot. That's right. So I'm actually not liking that text, so I'm going to make it all caps, and I'm going to change it to confirm and then no. But first I'm going to drag in my variables, drag in the delete character slot pop-up, and the delete character pop-up confirm button. I'm also going to rename this to the same name as my variable, so if in the future something becomes unhooked for whatever reason, not that it ever should, it's no trouble to find this using the search in the inspector. And as I just stated too, I'm going to do the same thing with the actual pop-up itself, and then I am going to rename the text on these buttons to something that's confirm, and then, yeah, confirm and no seems better. And like I said too, all caps, I think that suits the style a bit more. Won't spend too much time on it, but it's nice to make it look at least a little bit pretty. All right, so now that that's all there and ready to go, we need still to create a way for our inputs, and that's pretty straightforward. Let's save the scene. As you can see, this title screen is always being enabled and disabled, and we can use that to our advantage because we want to use an update function to read an input, but if it's always running, it's just wasting memory. So since this is toggling on and off, it's only going to run the update when it's actually on, which means we're not just needlessly running in the background all the time checking to see if we're pressing X. So let's make a title screen load manager, or load menu input manager. And if you don't want to call it something as long-winded, that's fine. All you need to know is this is keeping track of the inputs when we're on our loading screen or our load character slot screen. So I'm making my namespace SG, delete the start and update functionality. And if we were to take a peep over at our old input manager, which we'll do in a second, let's just make a player controls variable first, because that's what we called our inputs way back when we made them. And let's make a header for, let's actually go to the title screen manager because we already made this, and let's copy it and delete it from here and paste it over in this script now. So I've got the header called title screen inputs and delete character slot is equal to false. So what we want to do is make an update function, and we're going to say if delete character, apologies if you can hear my dog, he just yawned. If delete character, we're going to say delete character is equal to false, and then we want to say title screen manager.instance.delete character slot. So we're going to actually attempt to delete character slot. Is what we want to call. Now, this is going to run ideally when we hit the desired button. So let's make that button. And if you guys don't know how to do this, or if you do know how to do this, pause the video and go ahead and do it now. I encourage you. It's great to practice on your own. If you don't, watch me. So let's make an on enable and on disable. And let's actually go and peep our player input manager. So you can see here we're actually initializing our player controls by making a new player controls. And then we're binding our bools to a button action using an event. So let's just do exactly that. What do we want to do? Well, we want to say if player controls is equal to null. And then we're going to say player controls equals new player controls. And then we're going to say we want to put our button down here. Like when you press whatever, change this delete character slot to true. So, and then after that, we're going to say player controls, this is outside of the null, dot enable. So it actually enables the controls when the object is enabled. And then on disable, player controls dot disable. So when this object is disabled, it disables the controls. So let's go to the player controls. And I'm going to make a new action map for just UI, which we can use in the future for multiple things. And I'm going to copy any of these buttons here. So I'll take dodge, that's a good one. And I'll paste it in here. And I'm just going to change the button from gamepad east to gamepad west. And I'm going to call it X. If you don't want to call it X, it's totally fine. If you'd rather call it something more easy to understand. But since I'm probably going to use this input for multiple things, I'm just going to keep it as general as possible. So I'm just going to call it X. So again, for me, that's the button west on the gamepad. If you want to use something else, by all means do it. Close this out and save it. Now we go back into the script. We say player controls.ui. And then we say .x.performed. Then we use our weird syntax of plus equals I equals greater than, and then we pass over our delete character slot is equal to true. So when we press the X button, delete character slot turns to true. So we're almost ready now. Let's go over to the pop-up. We want to make it so we can't accidentally select a button that's not on the screen. So go to the buttons for confirm and no, and change the navigation from automatic to none, and then change it to explicit. And then what you want to do is for the confirm button, have it so when you select left or right, you go to the no button. And then on the no button, when you select left or right, make it so you go to the confirm button. We do this so we can't accidentally select something that's off of this menu, because this menu kind of pops up over something else. And this makes it so you're locked into these two buttons. Now, with that working, we should be able to save, and this should work if we have no problem. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to start the game. I'm going to press start, and then go to my load game. I'm going to scroll down, press X, delete, confirm, and I have an error. So what's happening? Let me check this out. Okay, so it's saying our save file name is null because I ran a debug log. So what I'm going to do is make this code neater by first saying save file data writer dot save file name is equal to decide character slot name. And then I'm going to make sure I'm calling the save file data writer first, and then also filling in the application.persistent data. So you can see here I ran a debug log. File name is just nothing, and it's saying we have unauthorized access, delete this. So basically we're trying to delete something that doesn't exist, and this is why we're actually deleting the character, but we're calling select no slot because basically we're running this line of code after we run load menu return button dot select. And as you know, when you select the return button, it clears the character slot. So that means we're deleting nothing. So position that after you delete the profile and you should be good to go. Now we have to refresh these slots because right now if I delete it, check this out, I hit confirm and it does delete, but you can see this is still there. So this is a very easy fix. You could do it the complicated way and make a list and return it and, basically refresh everything in the list, or you could just say load, this is under delete character slot by the way, and this is under the title screen manager script. What you want to do is take the title screen load menu game object and just disable it and then enable it again right before you select the load menu return button. Because as you know, on all of our buttons, when they're on .enable, they basically check to see if there's a file associated with that button. And if it is, it activates, and if it doesn't, it just disables. So I'm going to say we disable and then enable the load menu to refresh all of the character slots after we delete one. And that's it. Now if we go back into the game and delete the file that we have active, it should auto select the return button and it should clear. So I'm going to try that right now. I'm going to press play, press start, going to go down to load game, delete this character slot, and boom, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple more things. First, I'm going to go into the game here and I'm going to save my profile 10 times, not only to make sure all these slots are working, but also because I need to fill up every slot to show you what needs to be done next. So I'll be right back. There we go. I have 10 slots, and as you can see, boom, here they are. But watch what happens. If I scroll down to the last one, it's off screen, and it doesn't focus to the slot. So basically, you can scroll and you have a slot selected that you can't even see. So what we want to do is we want to make it so the slot that you have selected is always in view. And for that, we're basically going to make a script that is going to auto-scroll the scroll rect when we're using a controller. So let's go to our scroll rect, and I'm going to put this on the same game object that contains my scroll rect. I'm going to make a UI underscore match underscore scroll underscore wheel underscore to underscore selected underscore button. And this is going to do exactly as it states. It's going to basically scroll the scroll rect to the selected button. Now I'm using a modified version of a gentleman named Sovereign's code. He posted this on GitHub, so thank you very much if for some reason you ever find yourself watching this video. I've edited it to suit our needs a bit, but it's going to work in the exact same way that he intended. So let's make a serializable field game object for current selected. Let's make a serializable field game object for previously selected. And then let's make another serializable field here. And this is going to be a rect transform. And this is going to be the current selected transform. And then we need to make a serializable field for the content panel and the scroll rect. So let's also make one more rect transform for the content panel itself. And then lastly, the scroll rect. And to do that, I'm probably going to need to say using UnityEngine.ui. Yes, I am definitely going to need to say that. So using UnityEngine.ui, scroll rect. There we go. So what we're going to do on this? Well, we're going to also use, we're going to take advantage rather of Unity's event system here. So let's make an update function, and then let's make a function to basically do some math to actually center our content panel here. So update, and then right below that, private void snap to. I'm just going to make it require a rect transform, and I'm going to call that the target, as in the target position we want to snap to. And I'm going to say current selected equals, and if I want to use the event system, I'm going to have to say using Unity Engine, I believe it's just called .event system. Let's see, Unity Engine .event systems, yeah. So then we can say current selected equals event system current selected game object. Okay. Then we're going to say if current selected does not equal null, then we're going to say if current selected does not equal previously selected, because we don't want to be checking for this all the time if it's the same thing, we're going to say previously selected equals current selected, and the current selected transform is equal to the current selected dot get component rect transform. And then we're going to say snap to, and we're going to pass this current selected transform. So basically, this is just getting the button in the game that is currently selected by Unity's event manager, our event systems, and from that we're getting the rect transform. And then we're going to come down here and snap to and call canvas force update canvas. And then we're going to say vector2 new position is equal to vector2 scroll rect dot transform dot inverse transform point. And then we're going to use the content panel dot position for the position minus another vector2 dot scroll. Whoops, didn't mean to put that off screen. My bad. Dot scroll, and it's not autofilling, so I'm just going to copy it for whatever reason. It's not autofilling. So we're going to say vector2 dot scroll rect dot transform, and again dot inverse transform point. And then we're going to pass inside the brackets over here. I'll move over so it's not off screen. The target dot position. So I'm going to press enter here so it's in sight. But basically what we're doing is we're just getting the transform or the position on the screen from our newly selected object, and then we're going to say new position dot x is equal to 0 because we only want to lock in the y, the up and down, because our load menus is a series of buttons cascading from up to down, so we don't need to include the x-axis at all. And then we're just going to simply say content panel dot anchored position, so the position is focused on, equals new position. So yeah, we're just getting the location of this button specifically, and we're anchoring our content panel to it. That's all it is in a simplified explanation. So drag in the content panel and the scroll rect. You can keep everything else blank. Now we go to load game, and as you can see, boom, it's moving. But we still have a problem. Our mask isn't working. Remember in the last episode, or an episode before that perhaps, we made a mask. Well, I forgot to attach the actual mask component. And also, since our content panel isn't long enough to match our content, what happens is you can actually scroll this off screen still. So we're going to do two things. One, or the most important one, or actually they're both equally important, go to your content and check out the size. And then go to your mask here. And what you want to do on the mask game object is just go and add a component for a mask. That's it. And you can untick show mask graphic because we don't really have one. And now on the content itself, you want to make sure that the content is the same size as all of your objects. And I'll show you why. So you can see here now the mask works. I'm scrolling down, I'm scrolling down, I'm scrolling down, but I can still kind of go off screen here. And this is because we have too many objects in the content panel. So it's actually past the content's actual size. So again, if you can scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, you can kind of see it can go off screen. And even this one down here at the bottom is a little bit off screen. So basically find the lowest point where your save slots are and extend your content dimension out to that. So mine's about right here. And now if I were to save this and go into the scene, load game, I'm going to go and scroll down. You can see as I'm scrolling down, it's locking in the anchor position perfectly. And then boom, it ends and all my content is still on the screen within the mask. So I actually can go through these now and delete every character slot if I want to. And I'm just going to test this to make sure it works. And when you have a main menu and a new game and load game and save game system set up, it really makes the game already feel like a game. So this is pretty cool. So I'm going to do one more thing on request. Actually, two more things. First, I'm going to drag in this profile picture I've taken into our prefab for our character slot because in the future, we're going to make it so we actually take a screen cap of your character and fill in that slot automatically. But for now, just because we don't have any equipment or anything, I'm just going to use this because the character is always going to look like this. He's very handsome also. So I'll show you what it will look like in the future. I actually can drag in my project here, Nephilim. And if I drag this over into the window, you can see that basically on my save files, it'll just show a preview of what your character looks like. So I'll go to load game, and then you can see here, you can see my character's hair and beard and whatever equipment they're wearing and yada, yada, yada. So now, before we move on, the thing that was requested was a gentleman wanted to do multiple scene setups. So basically, you need to save your scene and then load into the proper scene when you load your game. This is very easy to do. Go to your character save data and make a header and then make a scene index comment here, or header title rather. Make a public int for the scene index, okay? And then go to your player manager. And what you want to do is when you save the game, you want to get whatever scene you're in using the scene index and save that to that scene index variable. So under save game data to current character data, we're going to say current character data dot scene index is equal to, and I believe I have to say using unity.scene management here. Let me just try. So if I say scene manager, yes I do. So come up to the top here and say using unity.scene management. There we go. Whoops, Unity engine.scene management most likely. Yes, that's the one. So let's go to the scene manager, and then we're going to say .get active scene. Then we're going to open up these brackets and say .build index, and that will get the scene by its index, and then you save that. So now that we have that, when we load a game, we need to load from that scene index instead. So let's go over here, and we have low world scene. I'm just going to basically change this, or rather, I'll comment and I make one other one. So let's comment this out, and let's copy it, and change world index to current character data .scene index. Okay. Now, it's important that when you launch the game the first time, this will be blank. So what you need to do is create a new load world scene if you wanted to when you launch a new game. I'm going to use the old one because I'm only using a scene and a menu. So what you could do is you could make a new load world scene coroutine, and you could use that one when you're launching a new game. So that's one way to go about it, but it's a bit long-winded in my opinion. So I'll show you a simpler way. If your entry scene is going to be consistent all the time, so for example, if the scene that you load into a new game is always 1, then what you can do is just go to your character save data and initialize that as 1. So again, I'll show you 2 options. Option 1 is you make a private enumerator and you make a new version of load world scene called load world scene new game. And instead of loading into a scene from your current character data, you just load into a specific scene that you want to start in whenever you start a new game. So this would require you to basically go to wherever you're making a new game, and every time instead of calling load world scene, you would call load world scene new game. Again, I'm not doing this because this is one way to do it, but I'm going to show you a simpler way to do it. I'm showing you multiple ways to do it because I think that's also important, and it's good to have different perspectives. But whatever way you decide to go with, it's all good. So I would come over here now, and I would go up to new game, and wherever I see load world scene, I would replace it with load world scene new game. Now, like I said, that's a bit long-winded, so instead of doing that, what you could do is just make it so that by default, your character save data has this variable initialized at whatever your default zone is. So mine is 1, because that is going to be my world scene. So you're always going to start the game in zone 1. So I hope that makes sense to the individuals who requested this. If you want me to expand upon it further, I can. But basically, you're just getting the scene index when you save a game. And when you load a game, instead of loading the world scene, you're loading whatever scene index you were last in. The only separating part is that when you start a new game, if you don't have that current scene index initialized at something, you have to make a separate function to start specifically where you want to start. So guys, if you made it this far, please drop a like and leave a comment. I know I sound like a broken record, but you have no idea how much it genuinely helps out this series so much. A special thank you to my patrons, as always, is because of you lovely people I get to keep doing this, and I'm having a great time doing this. So next week, we're going to get back to core gameplay functionality. This will conclude the saving and loading for the most part, but as we add on to the game, for example, weapons, items, equipment, we're also going to add in the capability to save and load those. So we're always going to be coming back to this because saving and loading is something you're always adding on to as the project progresses. But yeah, guys, I'm very excited to jump in the next video. I will see you all next week. I hope you all have a lovely week.